OzGIS provides support for common mapping applications, such as defining your salesmen's territories, your school districts, your hospital areas, and so on. It also provides support for more detailed analysis of catchments around sites, for example, the demographics around your takeaway food outlet or so on. And it's also got capabilities to allow you to locate new facilities, such as where you're going to put your new hospital, your new school, your new retail outlet, and so on. Now, all these applications rely fairly much on the data you can get, and you're usually using demographics, which means census data. So in Australia, for example, you've got all these various census tables that are available that you can use, and it's numbers of various types of people, where they came from, their religion, their incomes, and so on. And obviously the data you're going to use as the basis for your analysis depends on what your application is, what you're interested in. Now, one of the things you can do, particularly with attribute data, is some sort of modelling of the data to try and give this underlying data to tell you what you want to know. So, for example, I've got some New South Wales data, I've got some census data, and I've got a map that I've subset out, which is more or less Sydney. And if we start looking at this data, this is what we've got. And as we said, total population might be what you want to do. So if you're looking at a new hospital, then total population might be good enough. However, obviously, if it's a maternity hospital, then you're interested in women, and the sort of attribute you might then want to do is formed by some sort of expression to pick up just the variables for women. So, for example, what we've got here is we've got all sorts of attributes available, and in particular we've got people in various age groups. So for a maternity hospital, age 5 to 14 women, yes perhaps, and certainly age 15 to 19, and you're interested in women of childbearing age, so perhaps up to age 54 perhaps. Now we can add all these values together using arithmetic expressions, and the way I usually do this is to type in expressions in a text editor, so then I've got a record of what I've done. So, for example, these are the variable numbers which were given in the list, and to add those women together is just a case of giving an expression like this. However, it's obviously not quite what you want. For example, women aged 5 to 14 probably don't have very many babies, and if you're planning a maternity hospital, you've probably got some idea of the weightings of the particular age groups, so you might take these and add them by some weight to make a more meaningful extraction of the various age groups. So you might do something like this as a wild guess. Now, this is so-called modelling of the data, and it's a bit of a black art, and hopefully you may know what you're doing. So I can, from my editor, pick up the expression from there. So I've got these weighted things multiplied by the various expressions, and it'll ask me also for a descriptor, which I've also got in my editor, so I can copy that in. Now units are sometimes a bit of a puzzle, but say something generic like a model. Okay, and there we've got extracted for women of childbearing age. Now, having done this and perhaps tried various models, you can then go back to the top menu if you want, and in preparation of data we can process attributes, and you can actually form a new attribute file by going through the same sort of process, reading in your from your current attribute file, putting in all the expressions and writing out a new attribute file of the data that you want to use for your application. Now, another thing you can do is look at your own data if you have it. So here for example is an example of a spreadsheet where you've looked at your own sales areas, and you've output from your database for various postal areas your sales data, and you can then use that on a map. So for example, if we what we can do is a bivariate map, so we'll perhaps choose a bivariate colour, and we'll map a bivariate zones on which we're going to prepare our retail sales and compare them to the census data. So Sydney again, and we've now got our sales versus various census data, and then you can look at how well these are correlated. There's analysis, for example. You can look at the various regression coefficients. But a quick look at this: if something's well correlated, then you usually get a positive correlation. Is a nice line like this, and this is sort of correlated, but not really that well. But you can do the same sort of thing. You can start looking at secondary attribute again, and say, you know, my sales, are they dependent on medium household income, for example, and so on. And once again, you can start doing your modelling and add various variables together to try and come up with a model which explains your sales. Now, the sort of problems you get here, of course, is you might find it sort of correlates with income, which is dollars per week, and also number of people within a certain age group, which is what you're targeting. And it's a bit hard to decide just how you add these variables together when they're quite different. Now, other things we can look at in preparation for doing your application is we can look at our locations, for example, of our retail outlets. Now, you can find the latitudes and longitudes of the stores in various ways. For example, you can see here where your data is, so you could put a grid on here and features, wherever we are, region by region grids, put a grid around it and pick off where your location is, or and then set yourself up a little data file to put these store locations in. And these days, of course, you can also get on Google Maps or something like that and find actual lat longs off that of where your stores are. And having done that, you should be able to do some overlay, and I've got Sydney outlet locations. I'll put in those things. and there's our store locations. And these will become useful when you're doing things like location of, deciding where you might want to put a new store, for example, or doing analysis of your catchments around these various stores in the applications.